How we doing, Raven fans, Oriole fans? Thank you very much for joining us here for the Ravori Sports Podcast, and especially today, you watching the thumbnail, the Terp fans. So thank you very much here. So definitely check us out, our Ravori Sports Podcast here. We're our special edition here today. Definitely check us out. We're going to have our regular podcast every Wednesday. So check us out on Twitch, on X, and on YouTube, of course, right? So definitely check us out. Genesis Notary Services, Genesis Notary Services, Facebook.com in Winchester, Virginia. If you know, you know. So definitely check it out. Definitely getting calls every day about the notary business. Really busy doing that. I want to thank all of you in the Winchester area for that. Check out our links for Fanatics and, of course, of our website, the flagship, ravorisports.company.site. And we got a special guest here today for you Terp fans. We got one of the 25 best Terps of all time, I think, and when I put out the list here. One of the guys who held it together at a difficult time in the history of Maryland basketball, one of maybe the most difficult time in the history of Maryland basketball. Derrick Lewis is joining us here on the Ravori Sports Podcast. How you doing, Derrick? How you doing, Coach Lewis?
I'm fine. How are you tonight?
I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm encouraged, brother. I try to be. Thank you for joining us here as well. And this was easy to invite you on. I want to thank you for coming on. One of the best players in the history of Maryland basketball. That's not hyperbolic when I say that. All-time leading shot blocker still currently, right? That's still in the books.
That's because nobody stays in school for 4 years anymore. They all leave early. So as long as that's going on, I should be safe.
Yeah. First thing I did definitely researching this, the recruitment of you at Maryland. You're a coach now. How different was that all that years ago in the 80s when you were getting recruited compared to what you're seeing now? How different is it for you? It was. I saw the video where you met Lefty Drizel and your dad was there and it was on TV and all that. Right. Explain how that went, getting into the Terps.
I mean, for me, in that era during the 80s, obviously no technology, there's no social media. You had to go to camps. You had to go to 5-star. You had to be invited, first of all. So I went to 5-star basketball camp. Howard Garfinkel was there, Kachowski. And if you went to that camp, you're probably going to play Division I basketball. Obviously now you have to market yourself. So a lot of players are being proactive and sending out video and contacting coaches, emailing coaches. We didn't have all that then. This was word of mouth. Hey, did you see, I went to Archbishop Carroll. Did you see Archbishop Carroll play DeMassa last week? They got this kid over there. I think you need to take a look at him. And that's how the recruiting process was then. I was fortunate. I did a story actually on Frontline in 1984 that kind of helped to put me out there also. But again, no social media. There's no ESPN. There's no cable TV. All TV channels were free. We had, I think, 6 channels, 6 local channels. There was no national stuff. So it was quite different than it is today.
There was 2 in Baltimore, 2, 11, 13, 45, 54. We even had 24 when I was little, right? We had to work our way up to that, right?
And I grew up in PG County. We had Channel 4, Channel 7, Channel 9, and Channel 20. You catch Sesame Street and Ultraman. That was my favorite.
we could see that in Baltimore too, but like you had to watch it through the static, right?
Right.
So like 4 and 7 would be hard to get, but like 5 and 20, you could usually see it through the static. As well.
I remember.
You talked about that. So you went to the University of Maryland, and you played there your freshman year, and you played what I thought one of the greatest basketball players that this generation ever saw, Len Bias. When I say Len Bias was a better player or as good as Michael Jordan, people kind of look at me like, because it never happened because of the tragedy that happened. But I mean, we're never going to know, obviously, but that's not inaccurate when you say that Len Bias was as good or certainly nearly as good as Michael Jordan was.
I think there'll always be an argument For me, I kind of had a view of both. I was drafted by Chicago Bulls, so I had to guard Michael Jordan every day in practice for a few weeks. Two different types of players, both spectacular, both fun to watch, both dominant in their own fashion. Obviously, Jordan was a guard and Lenny played the small forward. I know at the time coming out of college, I felt, okay, he's, looking back now, I guess 5 years in, I said he's going to be just as good as, or just as dominant. To me, Kevin Garnett was dominant. Charles Barkley was dominant. They weren't Michael Jordan dominant, but they were dominant. I felt Lenny would come in at that level in the beginning of his career, as dominant as a Charles Barkley, a Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, good player, but not as dominant as Jordan. I think that's where he would have fit in. Now, afterwards, when he had gotten to Jordan's level, that's what we can always argue, because there were two different types of players. Lenny was, put the ball on the floor one time and jump over everybody to shoot a jump shot. Never seen anybody jump that high on a jump shot. And again, playing against him every day in practice for 2 years, I saw it firsthand. But I mean, it's just an interesting question, just to try and figure out, who would he have been as dominant as Michael Jordan is? Because for me, he's still the best player ever played. Jordan is.
We'll never know. But I got to tell you, like, I saw it like when I was a kid, and it wasn't that far apart. I mean, if it was, they weren't the same type of player. I think if Len Bias, had survived here, was still among us, I think we definitely would have had that. Left-hander, Lefty Driesell, like the late Lefty Driesell, was the coach. Yeah. Long-time Terp. He was there. He recruited you. Right. Well, my dad used to hate Lefty, man. He used to yell at the screen and yell at Lefty, because Lefty was nothing like you see today. What was it like working with the left-hander?
Well, I'll say this. The University of Maryland wasn't my first choice of school. They weren't even in my top 10 when I was my senior year. I ended up going to University of Maryland because we said, let's have Lefty come in, since it was my hometown school. I said, at least have him come in for a visit. So when he came to the house, came to the door, my dad answered the door. Coach took his shoes off. Coach took his shoes off, and he went and sat in my dad's chair. And I looked at my dad. I said, "Oh, this is not going to go well." And that I said, "This is the beginning of the end. He's going to throw him out."
You don't sit in the chair. You don't sit in the dad's chair.
I never sat in the chair. I never sat in the chair. But he went over and sat right in my dad's chair. And he said, "Okay, Mr. Lewis, how can we get Derrick to come to University of Maryland?" And they kind of went from there. It wasn't so much about selling the university. It was just letting me know, let my family know he was going to be there as kind of a dad away from home, and that's how he treated all his players. And not that the other coaches weren't. I visited University of Virginia. I visited University of Michigan, Notre Dame, Villanova. They were all great coaches. But it's something about coming there and just making himself comfortable as if he lived there. And he said, "I'm going to take care of you like your parents do." And again, I decided to go for an official visit, and there were a couple of players there that went to high school with me, or Jeff Baxter went to high school with me. Obviously, I met Lenny, Adrian Branch was there. Some of the other
all
guys.
outstanding players, by the way, if y'all don't know these names. Yeah. Adrian Branch, Lenny Baxter, all that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, and they told me the advantages of coming to school there. I wanted to go away from home. My mind was set on leaving. I wanted to go to North Carolina, or either looking at University of Michigan. I wanted to get away from home. And they said, "No." They said, "If you come to Maryland, it'd be just like going to school away from home. You'd be on campus." And then Coach Driesell told me, he said, "You don't ever have to go home unless you want some money or you want to wash clothes." I said, "Yeah, that makes sense." But it was a fun time. The recruitment, and again, the level of care that Coach Driesell showed. And obviously his son Chuck Driesell was there also. And I met
he think he can coach.
Yeah, that's what he said.
They kept repeating that on TV. Like, I think I could coach. I think I could. Every time you saw a Lefty Driesell clip, they would talk about that. What don't we know about Lefty? What do you know that me watching the games and watching what would people be surprised to find out about him?
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough question. There's so many things that kind of surprised me as far as I see a coach again. Obviously, I talk about him being a father figure to the players. Um, he was exactly like a dad. I remember my freshman year, and we had just got back. We lost to NC State, and we came back and got to the dorms. And here's Adrian Branch. Come on, DL. Let's go out to the. We're gonna go down to get some pizza. We're gonna go hang out at the student union. So let's go do that. And Coach showed us that we had curfew to go to bed. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about Coach. He's cool." When we stepped out of that door, Coach Giselle was sitting in the parking lot in his Cadillac, and he took us straight to Bird Stadium, what was called Bird Stadium at the time, and we ran all night the steps, and then got up at 6:00 the next morning. I said, "Man, he's worse than my dad." And I told Coach, I said, "You're worse than my dad." He said, "Yeah, I told you when I went to the table." So he follows up on what he says he's going to do.
Bird Stadium has like 50,000 seats, man. Y'all ran
and we did all those steps. I was like, man, this is crazy. But it's funny when we look back on it now. But everything he did it for our benefit. It didn't matter what it was, whether we missed a training table and then get there, he made sure we had food, whatever it was. And I know a lot of coaches say that. Whether they all do it or not, I don't know. But he said he was going to take care of us like his own kids, and that's exactly what he did. And he made it worthwhile of going to the university there.
So, because of the tragedy, in part because of the tragedy with Len Bias dying on draft night, passing away rather on draft night. So Lefty leaves, a lot of backlash with the program, and then now comes in Bob Wade. Bob Wade was the best. Bob Wade. I don't think people realize he was a Baltimore high school basketball coach, but he was a nationally known coach. He was in national commercials. Dunbar was about the best team in the country in the high school at the time, and people wanted Bob Wade. I remember that they wanted this to happen. But as he comes in, your playing time increase. Len Bias is gone. You become. I remember like you were the center now on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You were the guy. You were like one of the smallest centers in the ACC. What was the difference now for you, and also in that compared to how you came in? What changed for you at that time?
Well, I'll tell you, I was a 4-year starter. The first 3 games of my freshman year, I didn't start. The 4th game of my freshman year, I became a starter, and I was playing awful. I was playing for more than 30 minutes a game my freshman and sophomore years. The difference was my freshman year, we had Adrian Branch on one wing and Lenny on the other wing. So we already didn't have enough basketballs for anyone else to shoot. It was going to be Lenny or Adrian. And they used to always go to Keith. Keith Gatlin was our point guard. It was funny. They always go to Keith to get me the ball tonight. Lenny go to Keith, get me the ball tonight. So this is fun to watch. And that's what we did. We watched them, shoot the ball, which is fine with me. We were All-American. I came into Maryland as an All-American. But we had All-Americans there. Keith Gatlin was All-American. Adrian Branch was All-American. McDonald's All-American. Terry Long was a McDonald's All-American. So we had guys there that were already All-Americans. And, All-Americans, we have a little bit of an ego coming in. So, we have expectations for ourselves. But the important thing at that time was that I was learning how to play. Lenny was teaching me. Adrian was teaching me. When the tragedy happened, when Len passed, going into my junior year, what made a difference is that I was the only player left on the team that had really played any amount of minutes that really counted.
I remember that.
We had guys that played a little bit, but I was a starter. I was a 2-year starter, and I had been playing 30 to 35 minutes a game. So I was kind of forced into a role of either I'm going to lead or am I going to fold up and not do this. We had all freshmen, sophomores. Myself, I was a junior. We lost some other players. Lost Keith, lost Massenberg for the season. but it was a difficult time on the court, in that everyone was young, inexperienced, and we took a lot of beatings that year, especially early in the season. But we always played hard. I made sure everybody played hard, and as I said, I'm going to lead by example. So I'm going to play the hardest. You're going to follow, or you're going to have to get out of the way.
You were easily the best player on that team at that time, even though the team wasn't as good as it had been the previous few years. At that time, you were easily the best player they had. Playing out of position too, I remember. Like you were kind of like
I was supposed to be in a small forward when I got there. The reason I started at center my freshman year is because, again, we had Adrian and Lenny. And I want to get on the court. I needed to play defense. I wasn't going to get on the court by scoring. So because I was a shot blocker coming out of high school, that's what I did my freshman year. And that got me on the court playing time. That got me to the starting position. Again, I continued to be a defensive player, whether it was blocking shots, but I also got a lot of steals. I was a defensive player, and that got me on the floor, especially those first 2 years. The third year, I upped the ante a little bit as far as blocking shots, the steals, and it's because it's just what we needed. And again, it was just tough coming in every night, knowing that I was supposed to be 6'7", 195. That's what we put in the program because it looked good, 195. I was probably about 180 pounds, 6'7", 180, but we couldn't put that. I got to play against Brad Daugherty and John Sally and Yvonne Joseph. There's no way we could put 6'7", 180 in the program. So I was 6'7", 195.
I heard you say after the game one time, it's like, I'm the tallest out there, but I'm the smallest here playing against all these big guys.
It was tough, but I had to find a way. And for me, it was about I was a student of the game. I would learn all the play. We had scouting reports. Every team in the country has a scouting report. But I'm the only one probably in the country that would learn every play of every team before we played them. So if you said 2, I knew exactly where you were going. Because I wasn't going to outmuscle you to get there, but I was going to outsmart you, and I was going to be there waiting. And that's what allowed me to play the center position. It wasn't because I was stronger than everyone else. I could jump, but I was smarter than they were because I knew the play. When you call a play, I knew exactly where you were going. And sometimes I would just go and say, I'm going to just sit over here and wait for him. I'm not going to fight through these picks and stuff. But it helped me a lot, and it helped me down the road also. And kind of what I try to preach to other players that I coach now about just the basketball IQ part of it, just knowing the game and knowing your opponents.
Did people want Bob Wade to succeed there at Maryland?
Oh no, we had,
without giving anybody up in particular, but like in general, it seemed like he got there and they didn't really want him to do well. It was a difficult situation he was in, but the vibe of, and how did he take it afterward? We kind of like didn't hear from Bob really at length after that.
Right.
After he left Maryland.
I don't think he didn't get a fair chance from a lot of people. That I don't think they were satisfied with the way he was hired. I think they felt Dr. Slaughter didn't look at the candidates that they wanted. And then when I say they, we have, every university has a boosters club, quote unquote boosters club. We have the M Club and Turpin Club, and they carry some weight. And from what I understood later on, they wanted certain people to be one of their candidates to be heard, at least have a sit down. But I don't think that that's what happened. I think that Dr. Slaughter at the time just went on and made his decision about who he was going to hire, who he was going to interview, without the input from the people that felt they should be having input.
Some people had problem with he was an African American coach, right?
Of course.
I mean, that was part. I mean, you didn't say it, but I said it, right?
Right.
Like it was not everybody, but there was some people that just didn't think that was that good at the time.
Right, and you could hear the rumblings and different people. Obviously they would never say it directly to the players, but we were smart enough to know what was going on. Also know that there was a big contingent of people that felt he was going to hire Morgan Wooten, and that never came to fruition. Obviously, I'm not sure if he was interviewed or how far it went or how far it didn't go, but there was a large amount of people that wanted Morgan Wooten. He was local. Everybody knew him from DeMatha, and he was a great coach. But Bob Wade was a national, he had a national reputation also. And anybody that played against that Dunbar team like I did in '83, and those Dunbar teams, they played like the Lakers.
And there was a Baltimore ban for years because of what happened to Bob Wade. There was a lot of Baltimore players that would not go to. That's all with now with Derrick Lewis last year,
right?
But they stopped doing anything. They stopped doing games in Baltimore and all that. So they didn't. It didn't happen. You went to the pros. You said I saw you got drafted by the Bulls there. I actually went against Michael Jordan, but you did most of your pro career overseas, right? You played in France and all that. How was that playing in? Because that's how it was. Like if you didn't play in now you have like the big three and all this other type of stuff. But now like in those days, like you had to go overseas to play. How was that for you? Yeah, playing in a different country.
I didn't want to be there, especially when I first went. I was drafted by the Bulls, obviously, and I'm going in thinking I'm going to be, I'm going to get to play the 4. Horace Grant was there. They had Brad Sellers. Brad Sellers playing the 3. So I was looking. I say, I'm a 4. That's what I'm going to play. When I get to Chicago, Phil Jackson was the assistant coach. Coach meets me at the airport and says, "Hey, Derrick, I'm Phil Jackson, assistant coach. Doug Clouse, the head coach. You're going to be playing the 2. And, we got practice tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. You're going to learn all the plays for the 2 guard spot." I said, "Hey, coach," I said, I don't play the 2. I play the 4. I don't play the 2. I didn't have any shooting guard experience. I was learning. I worked on my shooting before I left, but I wasn't a 2. So I got a bad draw. Now I signed a 3-year contract with Chicago. I didn't make the team. Obviously, trying to beat out Michael Jordan. They had Pippen there, John Paxson, Charles Davis. They had some other vets there, but I wasn't a 2 guard at all.
Pippen was just coming in the league at that time as well.
He was coming off back surgery. He had back surgery. He was coming off back surgery, but he was just coming to the league. So they would send me down to the CBA to Rockford to kind of get better, and never really didn't bring me back up. So that following year, I went over to France. I said, I'm going to go for 1 year, then come back and try to make it again. I went the first year. Good experience. I came back and was in Lakers camp, Los Angeles Lakers. They wanted me to come back in the fall to their training camp and try to make the team. But when you do that, you lose out on going to France. So I didn't have anything guaranteed. I went back to France. And I did that for 3 summers. This following summer, I went to Charlotte. They were the Hornets at the time. In the meantime, I kept saying, I'm going to do one more year. I ended up doing 15 years in France. The 1 year kept adding up. So, but good experience. And in Europe, when you play in that city, you are the everybody knows you in the city. In that city you're playing in. So you become sort of the Scottie Pippen or Michael Jordan in that city.
A lot of people say they're real. You are real rock stars in those towns where you're playing, right? It's just the whole. They're really basketball crazy in France, China, some of those countries over there. They really love basketball.
They are, as long as you're playing well. If you're not playing well, they send you home very quickly. There's only 2 Americans per team, and if you don't, if you lose a game, they pick up the stat sheet. If you didn't get your 20 and 12 or whatever you're supposed to get, like, oh, Derrick didn't get his numbers. We got to bring somebody else in. They would send you home very quickly. I saw a lot of guys come and go when I was there for those 15 years. But as long as we played once a week, especially in the early 90s, once a week. So all you had to do was play basketball. You didn't have to cut the grass. They cut your grass. They did everything for you. But when Saturday night came, you better be ready to play. And if you weren't, that was going to be a problem. So it was a little bit of pressure for the Americans, and it's still that way as far as you better produce or we'll bring somebody else in.
So you played a long time. You had a long pro career. Before I get to your coaching career, do you miss playing?
I do. I still play. I probably shouldn't because I'm going to end up tearing something. Even last year, being with the Cows, I didn't play, but when I worked with the Postmen, I had to beat them up a little bit, or try to. They had some big guys, but that's what I did for years. Playing the post. We played. Basketball was a contact sport when I played in the 80s and 90s. Now it's not a contact sport anymore. But when we played, it was a contact sport, and that's how I practice against those guys. Say, you're not gonna get anything for free. But yeah, I still play. I need to stop playing before I do tear something or hurt something, but I still do play.
Wonder how Charles Oakley and Brad Doherty and guys like that would do nowadays. And John saw the thumbnail. John Sally, the Spider, would do nowadays, like in the way the game is played with all that physicality.
They foul out. You can't touch anybody because somebody's gonna flop.
But they wouldn't have cared. They're gonna foul out. They're gonna be all right. Foul out.
They will. And I was taught a long time ago, somebody flops on you, you just fall on top of them, because they started that flopping when I was over in Europe. So when they flop, just fall on them and just like this, and they'll stop flopping. It works. It worked in the 90s. But now, man, it's hard to watch sometimes.
How long have you been coaching? Well, before I even get to that, one more. Was coaching the path you for sure were going to go down after you stopped playing? Was anything else? You've been in basketball your entire life. Was there something else maybe did you want to go into besides maybe on the management side or other business or anything else that you want like after your playing career?
My original plan was to join the FBI when I retired. When I retired, I was 38. I was 38 and 9 months. And I think I was 6 months too old to join the FBI. I said, I'm probably in better shape. I was just coming off the season. I said, I'm probably in better shape than most of the FBI is anyway. I said, can I at least get a waiver? They said, no, you have to be, I think it was 38 in 3 months or 37 in 3 months. Whatever it was, I was a few months too old. So that plan went out the window. It was Gary Williams who said, Derrick, you should, I was helping at basketball camp. He said, you should run your own basketball camp. I said, I don't know how to do a basketball camp. He said, sure you do. He said, you've worked at camps before. You see how they run. He said, there's nothing to it. You should do that. He said, and then get into coaching. So he was kind of the first one that mentioned it, along with Coach Giselle, who was still living at the time. He said, you should do that. He said, because a lot of people that do run camps and that are coaching that don't know what they're doing. He said, we know, especially Coach Giselle, he said, I know how you used to study the game, study the video, and what you're capable of. He said, that's what coaching is. He says, understanding the game and understanding what your team needs to do and what the other team is doing. So that's kind of how I started. That was back in 2005. I started doing the basketball camps. But I was retired. I'm just going to stay home and watch TV and try to do whatever. But they talked me into it, and that's how I started, at least thinking about it. I didn't want to do AAU because the parents are crazy, and I'm old school. I'm no nonsense. It's like, if the parents didn't come to every practice or watch practice, then we can't talk about playing time. We can't talk about anything. And I'd offer every time I coached in high school, I say, if you come to every practice and you sit there and practice like I do for 2.5 hours, we can talk about playing time and everything else you want to every game. But as soon as you miss one day, all bets are off. But AAU is just a different animal. I've done travel also, and everyone's a Division I player, and that's the issue. Everyone thinks they're a Division I player, and you have to cater to that. But it's something I enjoy. Despite all the issues with parents and that type of thing.
How are players now compared to? I try to guard against that myself. I don't want to be the get off my line. Oh, well, those guys back myself, because I see there's a lot of obviously talent out there now. But what's the difference between, and I don't mean necessarily talent on the court, but when dealing with the young men compared to when you were playing or when, in the 80s and 90s when I was watching you were playing and all that?
The problem now is that once you get these kids in high school, they've all been told how good they are. They've never been corrected. They've never been told, you need to work on this. They've all been told, you're good, you're going to make it to the NBA, and they're in high school. So the reality is that a lot of them get to high school, they'll have the basic knowledge, and I'm talking about knowledge and fundamentals that they need to be successful. But then that trickles down to, AAU, where you play 3 games a day. So it's not about learning how to play the right way. It's about winning more so than actually learning how to play. They may practice once or twice a week, and they think they're ready to play. You have a handful of players. You have some players, the best players, the ones, basketball IQ, they go home and work after the AAU practice. You have another large contingent that they go to practice, the AAU practice that one day, 2 times a week. They wait for the game, and that's it. And then they want to go out and shoot threes, either shoot threes or drive to the basket and dunk. There's no mid-range. Very few players have the mid-range game anymore.
Jeff Malone rolling over in his grave somewhere, even though he's still alive.
Jeff a Division I shot. Yeah. That's a Division I shot. I tell guys that's the Division I shot. Be able to take 2 hard dribbles, pull up from about 15 feet, and knock a shot down. You do that, I said you play Division I. Everybody shoots threes, everybody can drive to the basket and win a dunk. But who's gonna take 2 hard dribbles left or right, stop on a dime and pull up? Nobody. And it's hard. It's hard because nobody works on it. That's the reason why.
I agree with that too. It seems like, the game is not street ball anymore, right? The physicality. It used to be like, guys, do these kids ever play on the blacktop? I can tell a lot of them have never played on the blacktop. I played, I grew up in Baltimore. I played down at the Dome, down at the Dweez Field, some of that stuff. Yeah. I know. I mean, these guys, I could tell they played under the whistle. I could tell when they're looking for the ref. So what is it that you the physicality? Do you teach physicality? Is that something that you can, or some guys just have it, or some guys just don't have it?
Yeah. I think that's partly true. Some have it, some don't have it. Every team that I coach, every player that I coach, I said that if you don't have, the best players have the biggest egos. I said, it's not that you wear it. I don't wear it on my sleeve. I said, but watch. I said, when I walk in the gym, I'm outside. I'm outside walking around, I'm watching the game. But when I step in between the lines, your whole facial expression should change. You should walk a different way. I said, if you're not walking a different way, your facial expression doesn't change when you step between the lines of a basketball court. You're not that guy. You're not going to be successful. And that's the easiest way for me to try to teach that to those guys. I say, if you're still, you can smile, you can be happy. I said, but your face should look the same. When you get ready to play a basketball game, your face should not look the same as it did when you were in the locker room. It's your whole demeanor is different. I said, that means something's going to happen. I said, the other thing you need to understand, if I'm playing in a game and I have the ball, I'm on offense, I have the ball, and you say, I got Derrick, that's disrespectful. I say that's being disrespectful, so now you got to pay. You say you got me, that's disrespectful. If I'm guarding you and they throw you the ball, like you're going to score on me, that's disrespectful. So now we got a problem. If you don't have that mindset, you're wasting time. And I tell all the players, that's the mindset you need to have.
Again, that's a blacktop thing. We used to say that outside. That was disrespectful. Yeah. I got him. No.
Man, right. Something's great happened. When you say that, you say I got him. Something great happened.
Yeah.
Right now,
you ain't got me. Right. Nobody would have ever did that to Michael Jordan or Lynn Bias and said, "All right, well, I didn't." They would have never done that. You're still coaching. How many years has it been that you've been coaching now? It's been 25 years, right? Something like that.
Yeah, because I did a little bit in France before I came back over with the junior team. But it's been, close to 23 years. 23. Because I came back and coached in high school, started on the JV level when I first came back. Then I coached varsity, and then again the year CCBC, AAU, and then this past year with the Cows. This is about almost 23 years, 24 years now.
You're with the Vipers now, the Valley Vipers. I talked to Kirby a couple of weeks ago. He was telling me, and he gave me the press release, how you're coming in. I was so excited that you're going to be here as far as coaching. What can we expect from you now as the coach of the Vipers now, going in coaching this group of young men who are, look, you never know who comes nowadays. The players come from everywhere. You look at guys like John Starks and Mason.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, you know, there was no path for those guys. Those guys went all the way to the NBA. So you never know what these guys. What's your goal with a lot of these young men here still fighting to play pro and have a career like you had, at least what you had overseas, etc.
I guess for me, just the fact that I've been where they probably want to go as far as the professional level. And again, I wasn't the strongest guy. I probably wasn't fast. I could jump. I had attributes, but I worked hard. And, you know, seeing your guys play, the Vipers play last year, they had some good players in that team. They probably should have gotten us a couple of times. I think we did beat them each time. They had some good players in that team. I'm like, man, this guy right here, that's a nice move. And I'm watching, I'm analyzing other players or writing stuff down. But my goal in coming in to help the Vipers and Coach Ed is that I like to help these guys get to that next level, where it's going overseas, get into the G League, or obviously the NBA. And I'm actually helping a couple of Cows players right now with some contacts I have over in Europe. All these guys can play. It's just that it's so competitive now that if you don't have, one, the right mindset, and two, you're not working on the right things, you're just another player in the bunch. But these guys, and again, I don't know their names. I don't have the roster in front of me, but I kept all the rosters from every team. I had little stars next to them. This guy does this. This guy does this. This guy can't go left. This guy can't go right. This guy goes left every time. This guy likes to take two dribbles. I can probably break down. If I go and get my notes, I can probably break down those players that were on that team last year just from their tendencies and what they like to do. But my goal is, again, to get them beyond that, make them so that when they do step in between the lines, like, oh, man, I got to guard this guy. That's how people should feel when they step between the lines and they're playing against the Vipers. Oh, man, I can't believe I got to guard this guy tonight. That's how somebody should feel when they step on the court. That's what I'm looking to establish with these guys, whether it's the physicality of the play or just being that guy, man, nobody wants to guard him. Once they get to that point, I mean, the door is open.
So what's the best player you've ever worked with in terms of as far as that outside? You said Michael Jordan, but that's obvious, right? But like, so somebody else. I mean, what would you say is a name that people wouldn't know as a player or a coach? Man, that guy was just blew my mind every day as a player.
I'm gonna tell you this. There's a guy that played in the NBA. He was in France. I played with him in France. Actually, I played with him and two of them. There's a guy named Mikel Petrus, Boris Diaw. Boris played in San Antonio. Michael played in Boston for a while and played in Miami. When I was on that team, there were two young guys, 18, 19 years old. I was 34, 35. They were being talked about as potential draft picks for the next draft. And the two of them, they were young, didn't understand the work ethic that I thought they needed to have, especially Michael. Boris was a little bit more advanced, but Michael was he was a comedian. He had a brother on the team, and I said, Mike, if you want to play in the league, which I think you can do, you're gonna have to, again, the same thing. You're gonna have to step up and act like you really want it. From that conversation we had, that was in October. We played one-on-one every day the rest of that season before practice, after practice, and working on a certain side. I tried to rough him up. Michael was a guard. He's a 6'3", 6'4" guard, but he could jump and very athletic. Those two guys did well, especially Boris. Boris played in the NBA probably, I think, 10 years. He's on San Antonio with Tony Parker. Tony was a kid also when I was in France. So all those French guys I played against, but I was on a team with Michael and Boris Diaw. And I look back, I'm like, yeah, these guys, I know where they were when they were young and they weren't ready, but they got ready real quickly. So again, it wasn't my doing because they put in the work. But I can say, I got a chance to beat them up and tell them, this is how it's going to be when you get there. And I think that helped them out a lot.
Boris Diaw, too, was one of the few players that I remember as a Laker fan who stood up to Kobe Bryant consistently. So many guys were intimidated by Kobe Bryant. Boris Diaw, I remember watching him. Boris Diaw would throw him to the ground if need be. Like he wasn't worried about anything. So
because
you talk about that mindset.
Yeah, he grew up playing in the EuroLeague, which is probably the best league outside the NBA over in Europe. And, he played against, you look at all the European players that were there. He probably played against Ginobili, played against Nowitzki. He played against all those European guys. He played against maybe Kukoc at one time. So all those guys that came up in Europe, he was already getting experience playing on that level against those guys. And when I was on that team with him, you were going to be scared. We had 2 starting fives, and our practices were tougher than the games. So if you weren't putting out in practice, you weren't going to play because we were killing each other in practice. We were good friends, good teammates. But when practice started, and again we were between the lines, it was something was going to happen. And there's no way I was going to let an 18-year-old, 19-year-old do anything to me. I'm 34. I've been in the league a while, but they got that mindset. And Boris, he's a big guy. He put on. He got in the weight room, got stronger, and I said, that's the one thing. Just don't be afraid. They're going to test you. You go to the NBA, you're a French guy. I said, you're going to be tested because you're a French guy. But he was not afraid.
One last thing we want to ask you. You're coaching with the Vipers now. What's next for the legendary career that you've already had basketball?
Well, I'd like to see us win championship this year. That's the biggest thing. I mean, we were one series away this past year with the Cows. But I've always wanted to coach at the highest level possible. Me becoming an old man now, the longer I wait, the harder it gets. But everything is always a stepping stone. Even this podcast, a stepping stone for me getting into the Vipers and getting in the organization and showing that I do care about what happens to the organization, those players. And I think it starts from there. It's not always about, I can coach. I'm not going to say like Lefty, I can coach, but I understand the game. And
I think I can coach.
Yeah, that's what he said. UCLA in the East. But it's about the confidence and not rushing to get to that next level. Again, I'm not a young spring chicken like Lefty said. Not spring chicken anymore. But if the opportunity came, I'd love to go as high level as possible. I'm not interested in going back to Europe. I've had chances to go coach over in Europe. I spent 15 years over there. Both my kids were born there, but I'm not ready to go back to Europe. I don't think that's going to happen to coach there.
Do your kids play ball? Does your kids play? Are you interested in basketball? That I take it as a no, coach, right?
My daughter, she retired at 12 years old. I let her play volleyball. She said, Dad, I want to try volleyball too. I said, yeah, that's fine. It's good to play. I played 3 sports in high school. Yeah, it's good to play other sports. Man, she picked up the volleyball, and now she won't touch. I thought she wouldn't touch a basketball anymore. 12 years old. I was so disappointed. So every time she was going up to spike it, I said, man, that could have been a rebound or a block shot. It still makes me mad today. There's nothing worse than going on your basketball court and doing this with the volleyball on the basketball court. And then my son, he grew up in the what I call the cell phone era. His interest wasn't there. Yeah, I had to cut him his junior year in high school. He didn't want to put the work in.
Well, maybe he'll succeed in something else there.
That's
well. I wasn't any good either in basketball by the time. But I mean, your son. I mean, you started about 12. That's about the time I stopped being a good player. I was pretty good up until that point. Once I got to high school, I wasn't that good. Coach,
I had expectations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for
Thanks for having
me. Great career here. And also to all of you watching on all of our social media platforms. Check us out on all of our social media platforms this week. Definitely this weekend. Terps coming up, basketball coming up soon. Terps football this week. I know Derrick's going to be watching the Terps football this season.
Yes.
So we're going to check it
out. Around from last year.
I know, Coach likes it. All right. Well, real quick, outro. What do you think about now? What's going on now? Kevin Willard, the whole situation. Before I outro there. You have any thoughts on that, Coach?
It's tough. I have met Coach Buzz. He's really motivated. I mean, we're all motivated when we get a new job, but he's going a step further in trying to include alumni and just reaching out to us. That's the first thing he did when he got the job. I'm excited about the basketball program, what's going to happen, what I think is going to happen. Obviously, a lot of people are happy with how it turned out with Coach Willard and the things about why he left and how he left. But we gotta look. I just say this. Look past it.
That's a very nice answer, Coach. You try to be you try to be nice there.
I didn't say that when it happened. I didn't say that. I had some other words that I said like some other people.
I hear you. Yeah. All right. He was a very, very, very professional answer from the coach. A lot of Terps. Show he's angry like a lot of former Maryland Terps. Thank you, sir. And thank you very much for watching us on the Ravori Sports Podcast. Like and subscribe to all of our social media platforms. You have a great day.